He is, by almost every measure, the greatest mixed martial artist who ever lived. The youngest UFC champion in history. A man who dismantled legends, ended careers, and made it all look effortless. But behind the highlight reels, behind the championships and the records, is a story that is darker, messier, and more complicated than most people want to admit. This is the dark side of Jon Jones. Chapter 1. The Golden Boy Cracks. When Jon Jones burst onto the UFC scene, the hype was real. He was 23 years old when he beat Mauricio Shogun Rua at UFC 128 in March 2011, the youngest UFC champion in the promotion's history at the time. He had the reach, the athleticism, the IQ. People weren't just calling him great. They were calling him generational. But the cracks started showing almost immediately. Just over a year into his title reign, on May 19th, 2012, at 5 in the morning, Jon Jones crashed his Bentley into a utility pole in Binghamton, New York. There were 2 women in the car. Both were taken to the hospital with cuts and bruises. Jones had slurred speech and glassy eyes. He refused to take a sobriety test. He was arrested for driving while intoxicated. He was the UFC light heavyweight champion of the world, and he was in handcuffs at sunrise. He paid a fine, had his license suspended, and went on camera to apologize. And many people forgave him. He was young. Athletes make mistakes. It happens. But here's the thing about Jon Jones. It keeps happening. Chapter 2. The Hit and Run. If the DWI was a warning sign, April 2015 was something else entirely. Jones was involved in a hit-and-run car accident in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The victim? A pregnant woman. According to reports, Jones fled the scene on foot, but not before running back to grab cash from the car. He left a pregnant woman injured in the street and disappeared. He eventually turned himself into police hours later. The UFC stripped him of the light heavyweight title. He was suspended. He would avoid jail time, but received 18 months of probation. On social media, Jones wrote, "Got a lot of soul-searching to do. Sorry to everyone I've let down." Soul-searching. He had a lot of it to do. Yet the pattern, the incident, the apology, the cycle repeating, was already taking shape. Chapter 3. Drugs, Deception, and UFC 200. Let's talk about the drug tests, because this is where the story gets truly complicated. In January 2015, days after defeating Daniel Cormier at UFC 182, it was revealed that Jones had tested positive for cocaine metabolites before the fight. He checked into rehab for 24 hours. The UFC fined him $25,000. Then came July 2016. One of the biggest cards in UFC history was about to go down. UFC 200. Jones versus Cormier 2. The whole world was watching. Days before the event, Jones tested positive for clomiphene and letrozole, banned anti-estrogen substances commonly associated with steroid cycles. He was pulled from the card. At a tearful press conference, he denied intentional use. He was eventually handed a 1-year suspension with the explanation that the substances came from contaminated sexual enhancement supplements. Whether you believe that explanation or not is up to you. But then it happened again. In July 2017, Jones returned and destroyed Daniel Cormier at UFC 214 in what seemed like a redemption arc for the ages. 1 month later, USADA announced Jones had failed another drug test, this time for the anabolic steroid Turinabol. His victory was overturned. The title was stripped. Again, 3 failed drug tests, 2 title strips. The greatest fighter of his generation, and a 3-time doping offender. Chapter 4. The Man Behind the Mask. Beyond the legal issues and failed tests, there are moments that reveal something about the character of Jon Jones that is harder to quantify. When Khabib Nurmagomedov retired in 2020 following the death of his father, the UFC awarded Khabib the top spot on the pound-for-pound list as a gesture of respect. Jon Jones, who held that #1 spot, was furious, publicly furious. He complained. He made it about himself, in a moment that called for grace. He chose grievance. Commentator Chael Sonnen put it bluntly, Jon Jones knew those things. He knew the death of Khabib's father was involved, and he still chose to operate without heart. Then there's the infamous brawl with Daniel Cormier at the UFC 178 press event. Live in front of cameras, staff, and fans at the MGM Grand. Cormier pushed Jones. Jones dropped his belt and charged. Bodies hit the floor. The backdrop nearly came down. UFC President Dana White has said himself, there is a dark side to Jon Jones. Even Dominic Cruz, when asked to describe Jones, paused and said, like the dark side of the yin-yang. If there was Star Wars, he would be the dark side. Chapter 5. The Pattern. What makes the Jon Jones story so frustrating and so fascinating is the pattern. Incident, apology, redemption narrative, incident again, the DWI, the hit and run, the cocaine, the PEDs, the probation violation, the drag racing, the homophobic slur on social media, which he blamed on his team, the threatening behavior toward a USADA drug tester, the 2025 incident, involving leaving a crash scene, charges that were ultimately dropped, but that, once again, put his name in a headline next to the word fled. Over and over and over, he has stood at podiums and said, I accept full responsibility. And then the next chapter begins. The question isn't whether Jon Jones is talented. He undeniably is. The question is, what do we do with a legacy this complicated? Chapter 6. The Legacy Question. Jon Jones retired in June 2025. His record, 28 wins, 1 loss. The loss A. Disqualification for illegal elbows early in his career. By the numbers, he is the greatest combat sports athlete of his generation. But legacy isn't just numbers. Some will say the outside the cage stuff doesn't matter, that what happens between those fences is all that counts. And if that's your view, Jon Jones is untouchable, but others will look at the pregnant woman left at the scene of an accident, at the athletes competing clean who lost fights to a chemically enhanced opponent, at the countless moments where Jones had everything and chose the wrong path anyway. Dana White once said Jon Jones is the baddest dude to ever do it. Maybe that's the most honest summary of all. Not the greatest, not a villain, just the baddest. A man capable of breathtaking greatness and breathtaking self-destruction, sometimes in the same week. The dark side of Jon Jones isn't a separate story from his legend. It is the story, and whether that makes him more human or less of a hero, well, that's for you to decide. Jon Jones may be the most gifted fighter we've ever seen. But what happens when greatness comes without chaos? When dominance comes without controversy? If you want to see the other side of the coin, a champion built on discipline, control, and calculated dominance, watch my breakdown of why Islam Makhachev might be unbeatable. 2 champions, 2 legacies, very different paths. Click the video on your screen right now.